Urban Cultural Studies,
the podcast.
Interviews.
And welcome to Urban Cultural Studies Podcast. Today our guest is Barbara Thornbury, who is Associate Professor of Japanese at Temple University in Philadelphia. The University of Michigan Press just published her book, America's Japan and Japan's Performing Arts. The subtitle is Cultural Mobility and Exchange in New York, 1952 to 2011. Barbara is now working on a new book project focusing on Tokyo in literature and film. Welcome to the program, Barbara. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Ben. I'm very happy to be here.
I've just read your article. It's titled Tokyo, Gender, and Mobility.
Yes.
Tracking Fictional Characters on Real Monorails, Trains, Subways, and Trams. This is an article positioned at the intersection of literary and cinematic analysis, women's and gender studies, urban studies, transportation studies. You look quite closely at a number of texts, prose, fiction, and also at films. Before we get there, however, tell us, how do trains fit into the modern identity, the modern experience of Japan and of Tokyo in particular?
Sure. You know, it's not an exaggeration to say that the greater Tokyo metropolitan area, with its population of some 35 million people, has the densest concentration of rail lines and the largest number of regular rail riders in the world. It's staggering just to think about how many dozens of railway lines there are in the Tokyo area, the many hundreds and hundreds of neighborhood stations they serve, and the incredible efficiency with which they move people as quickly as possible to their destinations.
Right.
Taras Gresko, in his recent book Straphanger, quite accurately sums up Tokyo as a city of trains.
I like that.
Let me also add that whatever form the railways take, whether they are the constantly circulating local semi-express and express trains that are a highly visible element of the entire Tokyo area, whether they are the vast interlinked network of subways that run deep underground, or whether they are the monorails or streetcar-like trams that serve various pockets of the metropolis, there's no disputing the fact that railways are integral to the real and imagined cityscape of Tokyo.
And many would point out that cities in general are the product not merely of real or material forces, but also of creative forces, forces of social imagination.
Absolutely. It's that imagined cityscape that I look at in my article. What I particularly try to do in my article is to show readers some of the very interesting ways that novelists, short story writers, and filmmakers have used the actual recognizable space in and around Tokyo trains to reveal, shape, and construct understandings of gender in Japan today.
Right.
Well, these artists may be creating fiction, but in so doing, they are tapping into the very real sense that, especially for the Tokyo city dweller, when, where, how, and why a person rides the railways in many ways fundamentally defines who that person is within the context of society as a whole.
Sort of a tell me how you move through the city and I'll tell you who you are kind of thing.
Exactly.
Your article is, of course, very aware that trains as social spaces in their own right are, in a sense, a stage for gender dynamics, a stage for power relationships.
Right.
It is aware, you are aware, I think, that not all urbanites, to put it that way, seem to have an equal right to the train car, to the train station, to the travel experience.
Right.
I want to table discussion of the short story titled My Slightly Crooked Brooch for a moment, but can you take us through the other various texts, both filmic and literary texts, that you explore in the article? How does gender play into the train experience in each instance?
Yeah, there are lots of works of fiction and film from Japan that variously incorporate the Tokyo rail system into the stories they are telling. What I do in my article is pick out a small representative sample of such novels, short stories, and films.
And how are these works representative? What are they representative of?
Well, when I say representative, I mean it in two ways. One being that all of the works I look at effectively convey images of contemporary urban life in Japan, and the other being that all of these works have been internationally circulated, which is to say the novels and short stories have been translated into English, if not other languages as well, and brought out by established publishers. And the films have been subtitled in English and other languages and marketed in DVD format or streamed to consumers' computers by legally recognized distributors.
So listeners don't have to know Japanese to seek out and read and watch these works.
Precisely. I would quickly add, of course, that those of us who work in Japanese studies encourage and expect our students to learn Japanese so they can experience Japanese culture without language barriers.
Absolutely.
But part of our work is also to help take down those barriers for those who don't know Japanese.
Right.
Having access to translated published work and subtitled films gives people an important kind of cultural and intellectual mobility.
Though there may be nuances that come with the study of Japanese in particular, I think that professors of Spanish, French, of German would certainly agree with that.
Yes, definitely. At any rate, I chose the following examples for my article. Real World, which is a novel by Natsuo Kirino. The Thief, which was written by Fuminori Nakamura. Newlywed, a short story by Banana Yoshimoto, and 2 films, Train Man, directed by Shosuke Murakami, and Café Lumière, directed by Hsiao-Hsien Hou. All of these works were originally published or released in Japan within the past 10 years and were subsequently circulated internationally.
And they all take place in Tokyo.
Yes, they are set in contemporary Tokyo, and as it happens, all of them focus on young people. From the high school seniors in Real World to the folks in their 20s in the other works.
Okay.
As I say in my article, and this applies to all of the works, the wonderful promise of mobility, in the general sense of being able to move freely and securely to one's destination in both life and on the rails, frequently proves illusory or comes at a steep price, for women in particular. Women in Real World, The Thief, and Train Man, for instance, encounter predatory men on crowded trains, only to discover that society as a whole turns away rather than protects them. And in the case of Café Lumière, an otherwise independent woman finds her ability to support herself financially and live the mobile life she wants threatened because she will soon give birth to a baby. It's not just women, though, for whom riding the train opens up spaces of danger and uncertainty. The apparently successful male corporate employee in the story Newlywed confronts psychological crisis on his way home one night, suddenly deciding to ride past the station where he normally gets off because he just can't face the way his life has turned out. What's scaring him is that everything is just too happy and perfect at home with his new wife. In a sense, there are no more choices left in his life.
Now, what about that title? I mentioned it earlier, My Slightly Crooked Brooch, which figures prominently in the article. You write that this short story in particular, and this is your quote, metaphorically maps gender onto geographic space through the travels of an iconic young couple.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that couple. Tell us about their relationship and the way in which that relationship plays out over Tokyo's urban space.
Sure. Since first reading My Slightly Crooked Brooch, which was first published by Noboru Tsujihara in 2004, I've been amazed by the way Tsujihara connects the lives of his characters, as well as the points he is making about gender in Japanese society, so completely to the Tokyo Rail network. The as-yet childless married couple of the story, the husband Ryo and the wife Mizue, have been together for 10 years. They're probably in their early 30s. Mizue is a full-time housewife, and with Ryo moving up the corporate ladder, they're doing quite well financially. Ryo contentedly commutes by rail from their nice home on the suburban edge of Tokyo to his office in the city's main financial center.
Okay.
What's not going so well is their relationship. Ryo suddenly tells Mizue one day that he has been spending time with a university senior named Maiko, whom he encountered, no less, while passing through Tokyo Station one day just before heading home on the train.
So there's a love triangle of sorts.
You've got it.
Ryo, Mizue, and Maiko.
Ryo tells Mizue about Maiko, not to end the relationship with his wife, but to tell her that it is the relationship with Maiko that is coming to an end. Ryo goes on to tell Mizue, almost as if he is proposing some kind of business deal, that he wants to spend the last few weeks with Maiko before the affair ends. In her shocked silence, Mizue appears to agree to the deal. What Tsujihara then does is structure the story around Mizue's resistance, which takes the form of what can be construed as a masterful act of murderous revenge on Maiko, that's plotted over a series of journeys that the formerly stay-at-home Mizue begins to make between home in the Tokyo suburbs and her target in the city center. Without going any further into the plot of the story, I don't want to give away the eerie ending.
Yeah, we have to save something for the article's readers.
I agree. Seriously speaking, though, I'll just say that in this and the other works I discuss in my article, there appear to be emerging interventions and choices for train riders, as well as the possibility of ways that women in particular can assert themselves on a rail system built by and mostly for men.
Taking that notion a bit further, you quote another scholar, Alyssa Friedman, who's written that, quote, female mobility has become associated with sexuality in the Japanese cultural imagination and discourses about the city, end quote, and who has also pointed to the role of mass transportation in constructing this notion.
Yeah.
In a sense, you're applying this insight to a close reading of the story in question, My Slightly Crooked Brooch, which includes these overt, perhaps even persistent references to specific Tokyo rail lines, and you take the time to look at how each line's representation in the story reveals or it sympathizes with the gender dynamics of the characters.
Yes, absolutely. This is a really interesting aspect of Tsujihara's story. As I just said, I'm quite impressed by the way Tsujihara connects the lives of his characters and the points he's making about gender in Japanese society so completely to the Tokyo Rail network. Let me give you 3 examples.
Definitely.
First of all, to get from their home in the suburbs to the station where they transfer onto express or at least semi-express trains into central Tokyo, Ryo and his wife need to ride the Shonan monorail. That monorail line was completed in 1970 using sophisticated ski lift-like aerial track technology developed in France. Ryo is proud that he is the only employee in his company whose commute includes the monorail. He even likes the way it sways a little. It's high-tech and out of the ordinary. For his wife Mizue, whose life is completely destabilized by her husband's affair, the ride is not so amusing.
Gender is informing the travel experience.
My second example is the Tokaido. It's Japan's main rail artery and also happens to be the line Ryo mostly uses to go back and forth to the central part of the city every day. The Tokaido tracks were first laid down in the 19th century, following centuries-old roadways connecting the present-day capital region with the political, financial, and cultural centers of Kyoto, Osaka, and Kobe to the west. The Tokaido line symbolizes Japan's highly networked railway infrastructure and encapsulates the prerogatives and authority of corporate Japan.
Right.
The core customer is the male, white-collar corporate employee, a person such as Ryo. When Mizue rides this and the parallel Yokosuka line in her pursuit of Maiko, in some respects she is in what for her is an alien environment. Tsujihara underscores this by including a disturbing scene in which Mizue is groped by a drunken commuter on a crowded train on her way home one night. A last example is the Tokyu Setagaya tram line, which provides access to Maiko's apartment. It is one of only 2 tram lines that survive in Tokyo today, and it stands in contrast to what might be called the masculine Shonan monorail and Tokaido lines as a feminized, aestheticized historical artifact. It delights Ryo, who sees it, as he says, as colorful and small like a toy. It especially suits Ryo's vision of Maiko as a geisha-like, make-believe figure from the past.
What I really like, and I think this is evident in those brief examples, is the way that you use this story as a way of linking, in a more general sense, the citizen and the city, the individual and the social.
Right.
You're playing literature and these films off against their urban context and vice versa. You're using the urban context to make sense of these works of art. And from where I sit, this is a very mobile method of analysis. What is it that you want readers of your article to understand about urban mobility, about movement in the city?
Your question, Ben, relates to important issues that scholars like you and Stephen Spalding address in your book, Trains, Culture, and Mobility, Riding the Rails. A growing number of researchers across a range of disciplines are studying cities in terms of mobility, whether the specific focus of inquiry is urban history, society, artistic expression, or whatever it may be. To grasp Tokyo, and all cities for that matter, it's necessary to be able to perceive the workings of their tangible and intangible networks of mobility. And those networks, being as dense and complex as they are, with all of their nodes and connections, do not reveal themselves easily. I think the fact that so many artists, such as the writers and film directors whose work I talk about in my article, incorporate Tokyo's rail network into their novels, short stories, and films really underscores the need to uncover and examine life in contemporary urban Japan through aspects of mobility.
Thanks for being here, Barbara.
Thank you, Ben.
I think this is the end of our trip today through Tokyo's imagined cityscapes.
I've very much enjoyed talking with you.
Barbara Thornbury's article, Tokyo, Gender and Mobility, Tracking Fictional Characters on Real Monorails, Trains, Subways, and Trams, is published in the Journal of Urban Cultural Studies 1.1, 2013. Also, be sure to check out America's Japan and Japan's Performing Arts, now available from the University of Michigan Press. Remember that you can access the Journal of Urban Cultural Studies in both print and online formats through Intellect Publishers. And make sure to follow our multi-authored blog for more urban discussions at urbanculturalstudies.wordpress.com.